Here we go.
All right, welcome everybody. This is the KubeVirt community meeting for September 26th. Looking at the agenda and notes, the first topic we have is talking about block PVCs. Mark's not here, so I'll just give a quick update. This is basically just a status update. We have made a lot of progress in the last week in terms of getting the implementation set, and got the feature gate is actually merged, so we can actually use this with our default providers that are in a development tree. And code has been changed to pull request 1540. I think the previous one was 899. But this is basically just a fork so that Mark could take ownership of it and do a sane review process. And the review process has been going quite well, rapid feedback and response over the last 24 hours. So even though it's not merged yet, I kind of expect it will happen by the end of the day, and that should be a good thing, hopefully. Next up is IO threads, same sort of status update here, that no feature changes have really been made recently, more just feedback and review. So that should also hopefully merge very soon. And the pull request error is 1480 again, as a reminder. And we've done a little bit of work on the continuous integration system in terms of fixes and notes. So this is kind of a carryover from last week. But Peter Kotis, if there's anything you'd like to add in terms of the CI work you've been doing?
Yeah, so the CI, mostly the issues that we've experienced within Appendix. Two of them are fixed. The VMI lifecycle, where it panicked on cache and on endless loop, these two are now fixed, so we should not see them. The PR is merged for that one. The panics that were related to VM lifecycle, I didn't experience them, so they're probably already gone. There are other few issues, but these have to wait for other time. That's mostly it. We stabilized, we work with the standard CI, so it's now stable and waiting for the time.
So where were the panics in the test suite?
Yeah, there were two of them. First one, the one within the cache. This one was related to two consecutive calls to the API. First one created the VMI, a second one was getting it, and these two were so fast that the object didn't even make it to cache. And since the code is especially asking for cache, it failed. I'm not sure if this I should report as an issue. I'm not sure if this should happen, but from the test perspective, this is fixed. And the second one was related to delete event that never occurred, and the channel is able to be open for 2 hours and then it panics. So the tests are fixed, and the issue for this one is opened.
So for the first one with the cache, so are we talking about a crash that was occurring in the test suite, or is it one of the components?
This is one of our components.
Which component was crashing?
Validation webhook. It was
okay.
It was trying to get the object from cache, but the object was not there, so it panicked.
So was the fix to fix the webhook, or?
No, this is fixed to fix the tests, and if we agree that it's an issue, I'll open up issue for that.
Oh yeah, that's definitely an issue. Yeah, the webhook shouldn't crash. And also we should, I think Roman was addressing this, the way we're using informers, I think I even advocated for it, unfortunately. We shouldn't be doing that in the validation webhooks for that. Well, I can't remember if that was a preset one or a different one. We have the ability to verify with the VMI. We don't want the spec to change, and that's what the validation is checking for. We can look at the validation admission to see the old object and the new object. And I didn't realize that. So we can actually verify that the spec is the same without looking at cache now. I just wanted to point that out to everyone because Roman pointed that out to me.
Okay, as for that, then I open an issue for panic inside the validation webhook.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And next up, Prometheus Metrics. Roman, I think you worked on that, so I've tagged you with that. But
yeah, so so since some of you are using KubeVirt already, you probably experienced from time to time that VMIs are failing or something, or not starting up, and it's pretty hard sometimes to see what's happening and what's going on. And as part of that, I first introduced Prometheus Endpoints to improve the situation there. So for all our components, we now see REST calls, cache hits, and latencies, and they're integrated with the Prometheus operator. So you basically follow the user guides which are created and pushed, and it just explains you on how to deploy the Prometheus operator and how it integrates and discovers all our services then. So we didn't do anything special here. And also improve the detection of unresponsive virt handlers on the node, so that VMs go far faster to fail in such cases. And yeah, hopefully now it's a little bit more interactive and less guessing why things are not working. That's it.
Hey, as they call it. Go on, David.
I had a question about that, Roman.
Yeah.
So the way that the metric endpoint is exposed, it's there's a service associated with it, and we have a tag, and every endpoint that exposes metrics, I guess, is added to that service. Is that right? And that's how we can. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So that's basically a service from Prometheus itself. I mean, not a service. It's a feature for Prometheus itself. So we create a service and register all our services which expose metrics to that service. And Prometheus then looks up the endpoint behind the service and just goes to every IP which is registered there separately and scrapes it.
This might be a silly question. I'm not sure. Does this mean that every component has to be within the pod network then for it to be registered correctly with the service? Or could we have something in the host network and some in the pod network?
So you can integrate stuff from other networks too, for as long as Prometheus can reach it. But then it's not, in that sense, auto-discovered. At least the Prometheus operator allows you to also add a config map where you add extra targets which are not auto-discoverable. But all our components right now are in the pod network.
For now.
Yeah. Well, fever dream time. Would it be possible to have a proxy per node that could use a Unix socket to span?
So there are multiple ways. We can also make it auto-discoverable. So there is the guarantee in Kubernetes that every pod should, in theory, be able to reach node IPs if it knows them. So you can just register also services or endpoints which exactly point to the node IP and port, and then it will discover it too.
So unrelated question to that. I know that in our dev environment, at least, we're using self-signed certs because of expediency. Because we need the auto signer capability, which we aren't granting to ourselves. If we wanted to use actually registered certs that are, would be validated at a top level domain, how would we go about doing that?
So I first wanted to directly integrate it in the pull request, but then the part of implementing the auto signing got much bigger than the actual metrics exposure, so I delayed it a little bit. But we have a few different options here. There is, in Kubernetes, there is an autoscaler, not in OpenShift, for instance, but in Kubernetes, but it autosigner, not scaler. And that autosigner signs node certificates, so they have to be constructed in a specific way with a specific name and a specific, so the metadata of the certificate itself needs a specific format. And that's a little bit strange because we then have valid certificates, but they all end up looking from an admin perspective like they're node certificates, but they are not necessarily are. So as an alternative, we can write our own auto-signing controller. Not sure if that's what we want. And so I also reached out to few guys from OpenShift and Kubernetes to get their feedback on what they think in this situation is best for us.
And did you get a feedback on that matter?
So people are still trying to understand what I am looking for.
Okay.
So far, I mean, people in general are very helpful, but I mostly got feedback on how I can integrate it right now, you know, how to configure Prometheus and so on. And yeah, I'm just following up there and explaining, yeah, I know that, we do that, pointing to the user guide. It's just more about how to get valid ones, yeah.
Okay. Can you link to the issues you opened? If there are email discussion?
Yeah,
just
we'll do.
Cool. And by the way, yes, so I remember that like getting also certificates for pods, by the way, and that was discussed, but it really slowed down once Istio came into the game, because Istio functional-wise delivered something equivalent, right? You could isolate endpoints from different perspectives.
I get it. I guess it's can get more interesting again now with all the rework which was done in Kubernetes and OpenShift to make it more extensible, right? So to really provide add-ons and integrate them on the with the control plane. There you want valid certificates, which everyone on the control plane can validate and understand, I guess.
Yeah. Cool.
And a question came up on the mailing list this week about local providers and what that was and how that worked. Would you care to comment on that, Roman?
Yeah, sure. So we have for some time already a local provider, which allows developing against latest Kubernetes code. And what it basically does is it just uses go-get to fetch Kubernetes code, uses the hack local cluster up script or so from Kubernetes itself, and sets a few environment variables to configure it. And then you basically should have at least a working environment where you can again run make cluster sync and make cluster up to work with. And that's then on your local machine directly. One of the advantages here is that you don't need a registry actually. So the Kubernetes cluster really uses is really running on your machine, so it really uses your local Docker image cache. And so we basically just build the images and then we redeploy the manifests, and they just use the new images without us having to push it to an external registry or to a built-in one or something like that. Yeah. But it was not used for a long time, and there are minor inconveniences in it. So maybe if people start using it again, we can iron out them.
Well, it has its place, you know, when you need to test directly in bare metal, for instance. All right, well, thank you. And Peter Kotis, guest agent support, would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, so there is a first PR laying the grounds for the future support. The first PR is just enabling the channel, that's it. You set up guest agent in the VMI configuration, and it's at XML support for that. The next step following is adding KubeVirt support to read actually from the guest agent to provide some status about IP, about the disk space. And that's the next step. The third step for this will be adding support for installing the guest agent. And that's it basically. The first step is there. The design document have already been shared multiple times, so there should be in the meeting notes already.
Awesome, thank you. Any questions? And David Vossel, if you'd like to speak on basic live migration.
Sure, I can give a little update. So I posted a PR last night that kind of just has my proof of concept code in there. It's not in a great state right now. A lot of it has to do with the rebase that occurred right before I pushed it. But here's what I'm trying to solve. I just want to talk about the scope of what we're doing here and what kind of discussion needs to happen next. So live migration, it's a really complex topic, and we're not going to be able to solve it all at once. I've said that a few times at different meetings. And so what I'm working on here is what it means to bring just a very most basic form of live migration to KubeVirt. So I'm not talking about doing anything like IP failover immediately, or even what it means to consume shared storage and live migrate shared storage. If we get down that path, we're going to get buried in a lot of details, and I don't think we're going to be able to make progress at all. So the scope of what we're looking at right here is just the how to trigger the migration, how the migration progress is tracked, and just the mechanics of how KubeVirt performs the migration. So we're just talking about having a QEMU process with read-only disks and taking that state and transferring it to another node. So the proof of concept that I have right now does that. So I've introduced something called a migration object, and that object tracks the state of the migration, and it prepares a target pod for the migration to be migrated to. And the other controllers handle the actual orchestration of the migration after the target pod is prepared. So there needs to be a lot of discussion at this point. So I've proved, a way that we can do this. At this point, we need to look at the details of what I've done and decide, okay, yes, this is a way, but is this the best way? And what are the implications involved with everything in the ecosystem for how I've done this? And should we iterate on just the basics before we even attempt to take care of some more of the complex stuff? So the PR, proof of concept, is up there. I have a lot of details about how it actually works within the PR's description. I think next week, a few of us need to get together and really just discuss what I've done and the merits of it, and potentially start, something like a mailing list thread to discuss what the next steps for it are. But that's it for now.
Any questions, guys?
Well, I think that's pretty nice to hear. But no questions so far.
Cool. And so moving on, is there anything else for the agenda section to cover today?
I joined a bit late, but I can talk about the block volume devices now if you want to. So this is work in progress for quite a while. Stu started with it some time ago, but was blocked then by issues with Kubernetes and devices in privileged pods. But since our launcher pod is not privileged anymore, we could go on with this topic. The goal is to consume block devices and booting from them for the virtual machines. And after some configuration of our test environment, which was enabling the block volume feature gate, providing a test device, which is backed by a 0.0 image, and some final coding in KubeVirt itself, I got all these things working and pushed pull request now, cleaning it up at the moment, adding some more tests, and hope that the final round of review will be successful now and all tests will succeed so that we can get this merged. I think that's it.
Yep, sorry, typing on mute, my fault. So is there anything else that we'd like to cover in the agenda section? All right, moving on to the open floor. Liz Blanchard, would you like to talk about the UI?
Sure, yeah. I just wanted to highlight this here in this call. We've been a team of about 3 to 4 designers, depending on availability, have been working through thinking about how we could represent all of these topics, listing out VMs, VM details, edit details, create VM, and more within a UI. So I did link to the GitHub repo that we're using there. Really what that has is just markdown and images. So it's really all around the design side of things. So it would be great if anyone has interest and wants to read through the PRs. There's only a handful of them right now, but we'll continue to add PRs as we have more designs we're working through. But it would be great to hear everyone's thoughts there in those PRs, and we're happy to make updates to those. The idea being, once we get these in a really solid state, we'll be able to do less rework on the UI development side. So we'd like to do more of that thinking and rework on the design side. And I think that's it. I just kind of want to highlight that since I hadn't done that before in this call.
Awesome. Thank you, Liz. And Kareem, user guide status and plans?
Yeah, so Fabian wants me to comment on this, and basically the issue we have is that there are several sources of truth regarding user documentation, and we believe it's misleading for newcomers and then generally for KubeVirt users and developers. So what we want to do is in KubeVirt.io, first set a redirection there to the user guide, and then work on some way to have both source synced. So the first step will be just to add a redirection, and we will work on making sure that that whoever accesses the KubeVirt.io web page can be directed to the proper information regarding the user guide. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you. Any questions? Anything else to cover for the open floor?
Oh, I think we've got an honorable guest, Adam Litke. So maybe, I think that would be very cool. I mean, you're doing so much work which is relevant for KubeVirt. Maybe you can share a few notes on what crazy stuff you're doing over there. I saw PRs related to data volumes, which are valuable to KubeVirt as well. So maybe you can give us an up-to-date status of what is coming up from the storage side.
Sure, yeah. So we've done a lot of stuff. I guess I didn't really plan some thoughts here, but we've got a lot of stuff going on in terms of basically how virtual machine disks get up into the cluster to be usable by KubeVirt. And really there's 3 ways that those can happen: by an import, which we've been doing for quite a while, which is like downloading from a URL. You might want to clone an existing disk. And most recently, you might want to be able to upload data from your local machine into a VM disk. So we've actually been working on all of these in the containerized data importer project, which has gotten a closer relationship with KubeVirt lately via something that David Vossel really helped to drive called the data volume. So that's been discussed here on the call before. Data volumes really just orchestrate that process of I have a VM that wants data inside of its virtual disk via one of those 3 methods, and I don't want the virtual machine to start until that process is completed. So yeah, that's basically a summary of that. I'm really intrigued about the support for block mode PVCs, and since CDI and KubeVirt agree on using PVC as the lowest level object, that's really not a problem at all. CDI is going to be looking to do all 3 of these operations in block mode as well. So we should be able to take advantage of that and work together on, or basically mesh together properly with that support as well. So I think that's, yeah, I mean, that's a good summary. Are there any other like questions about that sort of stuff? Where basically KubeVirt likes to be sort of unaware of the underlying storage details. So whether you're bringing a storage array or software-defined storage or local PVs or whatever it is, it should all work the same. And really, that's one of the things that we're trying to maintain here, is to insulate the virtualization layer from that storage layer. So yeah, that's pretty much the off the back of the napkin update from storage. I have, if anyone has any questions for me though.
Thanks for that summary.
Sure.
All right. Just a reminder for anybody that put out forth a proposal for KubeCon. Responses are coming out, so keep an eye out for it. I haven't seen a response to my proposal at this point yet, so not everything has made it in. So check your junk mail. But hopefully we get some exposure there. And other than that, I don't think there's anything else to cover, is there? All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Hopefully we'll have another productive week. See you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
bye.
Bye.